Hello, everyone. It's Martha Novak, and this is a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak, a friend, very good friend. Um, I gave the name of the show because she said we always talked pretty bluntly, so here we are with Real Talk with Martha Novak. Anyway, glad you're with us. Darlings, we are talking about creating the life you want that everybody wants, quite frankly. Um, but sometimes ego Charles mind gets in the way, tells us we can't have it, and then we turn sour about it. There are ways to turn that energy around all the way to make really good decisions for your life and to manifest well. I want you all to know, however, because this is a different show from most, I'm trying to tell you really the way it is and what sometimes even some of these marvelous progressive churches forget to tell you. And that is that work is required to remove the blocks in the ego child's mind to doing this really, really, really well. So, and of course, what we're talking about on this show, whether we're talking about partnership, or whether we're talking about business, or whether we're talking about branding, or whether we're talking about God knows what. We talk about everything on the show, don't we? What I want you to know is all of these things that I talk about here are about the subject of you having a great life. And part of a great life is manifestation. So, directly or indirectly, everything that I have said to you is about the subject that we're talking about today. We're just giving you a little more detail. Okay? I want you to do it well. Hey, Kat! Good morning, dear heart. I'm so glad that we are with each other this morning. How fun is that? Yay! Anyway, I want you all to do this really well. It's important to me that we talk about the things in life that are valuable to human beings and to their potential. I think that's something I've been interested in my whole life. Now, I'm going to beg your indulgence today because one of the things I want to do with all of you is inspire you. Sometimes I think personal stories are that, and I can tell about other people, but I can tell you how this worked in my life in a big time way. I will mention things personally throughout our classes, but I don't usually tell you a story like I'm going to do today, but I am going to tell you a story. I want it to inspire you. I want you to believe that these things happen and can happen in your life, and I also want you to know a great deal of work goes into it to make that happen. So we're going to talk about all of that today and give you some exercises this week and probably next week too, because we've got lots of material to cover. One of the things I want to put on the table for you before we pray is this. This is a very good thing for us to talk about too. And that is this. It gets easier. Did you all hear me? It gets easier. It's hard in the beginning. That's why you're even having to do exercises. They're like props that remind you to think a certain way, do a certain thing, be specific, add your feelings. But you won't eventually need that. Why? Because the more you go to deeper levels of consciousness, the more creative you get, the more money you make, the more you see this working, the more you see when you failed what you did, not that there's any failure if you find out what you did, and apply it the next time, and you get better and better and better at using this. It's a gift. And you have it already. I'm just telling you some of the intricacies and hopefully inspiring you to go on and live your life according to your potential. Now, are we going to turn it on like a light switch? We are not. Hi. Oh, no kidding. Pat, I had no idea. This is my friend Pat that's just written in on Facebook Live. Those of you that are listening to me on the radio don't know that I'm getting messages from friends and friends I know and don't know. But Pat, I know quite well, and Kat that I've acknowledged this morning. And Pat, there was an early AM earthquake. I had no idea. I assume it wasn't huge. I didn't feel anything up here, but of course, I wasn't up in the early AM. So I'll have to read about that. Well, you take care of yourself too, sweet man. I hope everyone will be all right. The world is changing, isn't it? Always something interesting and new. You know what we did last night? Excuse me, I'm going off on memory lane, and then we go back to our session, our lesson. We went out, we live on a lake, and it's a very remote. There are not many lights out there, so it's a good place to go see the sky. We saw the Neowise comet when it was there. Wow, that was really exciting. You could see it with the naked eye. And last night, there is the Pleiades meteor shower. Okay, so we tootled out on our boat to the middle of a dark lake. It was very exciting, very romantic. Stars everywhere. It was one of those clear nights where you could actually see. And I had always heard about the Pleiades meteor shower, or any meteor shower, quite frankly, and I don't know. I think in my child's mind, I thought it was going to be something quite different. First of all, this was kind of one of those things where it was as Michael said, my husband, he said, it's kind of like a baby shower. The baby's not there either, because there weren't any meteors last night. Well, at least when we were out there for the an hour, we were out there looking at the sky saying, shower us with meteors. We saw absolutely nothing. It was very disappointing. Okay, so anyway, I thought that was a funny analogy about the baby. Okay, let's do a prayer. Let's get going. Just remember what I said before the prayer. This gets easier. It does. The more you get out, the only thing that's happening right now, if you don't think you're a good manifester or you are iffy about it, is that you're in the way. So what does that tell you? That you can't do it and to hang up your boots? No, it means that you should find out what's in the way, dispatch it and get rid of it and resolve it, and transcend so that you can deepen in these beliefs about God and everything being in you and bring anything forth that you want. It can be done. Okay, here we go. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are, and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much for being with us today and for all of us gathering under the banner of loving you more and wanting to know more about you and how you work in our lives and making it clear and making it a conscious thing and a deliberate thing on our part, that we may add value to this world in our way. It's the reason we're here, and we take that responsibility most seriously and realize it's a privilege. Dear God, we now ask that we see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do, and we surrender anything that is in us that says, I know, because it's the you through us and through all things that know. Our ego needs to get out of the way. Show us those little step points that we're having trouble with, dear God, and let us realize in grace what they are, and let us open ourselves now to challenging them in us, that we may have wonderful lives. We thank you, dear God, for knowing nothing, for it is the you through us that knows it all. And we open ourselves now to new lessons and new ways of learning. And so it is. Amen. Appreciate those hearts that just went by. Thank you. So last week, and if you haven't heard last week, you better, because all information in my lessons pretty much ride on what I have said before and then go off on tangents from time to time, right? We learned last week the formula for creating the life you want. The formula is a very simple one and yet very hard to do. And we were in the process of talking about that very hard to do section. Now I'm going to repeat the formula, and you guys that are listening for the first time might want to write this down, and oh, please, please, please go back and listen to our archive show about last week, which is on Blog Talk Radio, Facebook Live, and YouTube. Just enter my name and the date, Martha Novak, Novak. Real Talk with Martha Novak is the radio show. And last week, I think it was the 2nd of August, if I'm not mistaken. The formula for creating what you want is this: desire plus knowingness that lives in expectancy plus action that you must take or are propelled to take from the inside or the outside equals the manifestation of your desires every single time. Hello, Julia. Good morning to you too, darling. I'm so glad that you've joined us today. I love hearing from you all. I want you to know that. It's loads of fun for me, and it's loads of fun to interact. So if you have any questions or comments, by all means do. Now, you can also call me if you're on Blog Talk Radio through the guest call-in line, which is 347-850-1647, and I'm delighted to talk with you personally. However, I am trying to talk about this subject, which is how you manifest well. Okay. Now, we talked about a lot of the formula. We talked about why it worked and why it didn't work. And I was saying that desire is fine. Even if you don't know your desire, listen to last week because you really do. And I've given you the key to that. But the knowingness that lives in expectancy, because if you know you've asked for it and it's coming later soon, it's gonna be here. Because substance and thought are the same thing. So you have to go to the mind of God like we talked about last week. The problem is the knowingness. Are you capable of holding your knowingness when you don't see anything in substance? Are you so impatient? Impatience, by the way, is an issue. It's an issue that the egoic child's mind indulges in to slow you down. See, the ego child's mind doesn't care if you're happy. Is that surprising? It cares if you're alive. This is why we say that you're in the survival mode, not the thriving mode, and the creating mode, and the creative mode, and the manifesting mode. You're in the surviving mode if you're in that energy. You see, you have survived. And it was really important for us before we were 7 or 8 years old to really be in the surviving mode. We had to survive. You had to live, but you have. And now, at this age, you're saying, is this all there is? Is there more? What do I do with myself? I'm stuck. And I say, yeah, those are the questions and those are the comments you should be making right now, because you're changing from the initial concern, which you had as a child, to the larger concern, which is, how do I add value? Who am I? What comes out of me that I can add to the world? How can I have a better life? How can I love more deeply? wow, now you're on the right path for sure. How can I make better decisions? When I was teaching acting, I had an acting school for many years. I was an actor, and then I was a corporate coach. Uh, I do what I do now. I still act from time to time, but I still do corporate coaching. I don't have a whole lot of time for acting. One of the things I want you to realize is that we had um, very intense classes when I was teaching acting. And I had a lot of wonderful talent come out of my classes that you have seen on the stage and on the screen. And that's just great. I'm proud of them all. There was a difference between those people and the other people in my class that are watching them on television. By the way, there's nothing wrong with either path, but I wanted you to know the difference. The difference is not what they did in class with me, because everybody heard the same thing. They all had the same exercises. They participated more or less in the same things that I asked them to do. They heard the same lessons. The difference was in how much effort they applied outside the class and what they did for themselves and what they realized and what they acknowledged and what they went on to achieve. So that makes me think of you. And are you going to work to clear the blocks in you so you can do this well? Are you going to believe what you need to believe and do what you need to do? Are you going to really make an effort to work in your own behalf? Are you going to tell yourself the truth about these and other questions? So I want to put that on the table for you because those things really need to be answered. You know, I tell my clients, just be honest with me. I don't care really what the answer is, because my job is, if you say I can't work on my own behalf, my job is then to help you do that. But a blank refusal, you better be honest with. You better acknowledge. Okay. Now let's talk for a moment about knowingness that lives in expectancy. When I say it lives in expectancy, if you know something marvelous is happening, then the phone calls become interesting, even if it's from your friend, okay, and not from the new boss. Um, you look forward to the mail. You look forward to everything in life. You look forward to getting up in the morning. You look forward to what you'll create today, even if you don't have a clue about what that is. Expectancy is a wonderful God-given gift that holds our hope and our knowingness in place. You can't have knowingness for something good, that's what you're creating, without expectancy, right? Okay. This knowingness and this expectancy that's part of it brings a real uplift to your life. It's something positive. And many of us have learned to think negatively so we won't be disappointed. Well, if you're going to manifest well, you must challenge that, because we can't have you thinking like that. Again, we've talked about negative thinking in some of the work we have done before, in some of the other lessons on Sunday mornings that I've given you. Negative thinking really needs to be challenged. And of course, there are various reasons that you negative think. You don't want to be disappointed. You already are disappointed. You have a defeatism attitude. You live in a feudal place and a lot of other things. But guys, this is a world that is created by what we think and feel. And the more you invest in something like that, what are you investing? Your energy. That is a communication tool with the great beyond, with the universe. And the universe gives you more of what your energy is in. That's the way you say, I want more of this. So thank you so much, guys. So it becomes very important for us to get control of that. And what I told you last week is science says that the smart ones of us, of which you are, think up to 1,000 thoughts an hour. Now, those thoughts, my darlings, are cumulative. They are cumulative. Do you know where those thoughts went? Do you know whether they were positive or negative disguised as positive because you weren't watching carefully enough? There's work to be done here. There's a waking up that's supposed to happen here. Hello, Lisa. How sweet. You see, there's a waking up. We have to be responsible for what we're doing to get a different result. You've heard me say we need to write a different script, don't we? If we want a different end, because the end to the old script that you lived in your childhood and have been living up until now without change has already got the ending attached to it. It's usually something you don't want, like, disappointment, heartbreak, pain. But does it really have to be that way? Why not think new thoughts? Why not feel new feelings? Why not do different things? Why not think things spiritually that are different? And why not work on those becoming a new part of you and letting the old go? This is a tremendous advantage to you. Deepening consciousness, because it's in the deepening of consciousness where all this manifestation that you long for becomes easy and effortless. It becomes part of you. You go through life and something lovely happens and you go, oh my God, I forgot. I didn't even know I wanted that. I haven't even really worked on that. And here it is. Because you're compatible and cooperative now, finally, with that energy. And life is easier. I want to tell you a quick story about a client. This was a client a number of years ago. She wanted a new job. She worked for a Fortune 1000 company and hated every single solitary minute of it. She was, first of all, you should know that this is quite the unconscious company, still is. And she was a manager, but still a very small cog in a big, uncaring machine. Every morning she would slog into work and she'd enter a building, go to the elevators, and endure the day. She dreaded every minute of it before, during, and after her arrival there. Now, when she came in to her sessions with me, I have so many funny pictures that happened to her. She was really quite the hoot. I'm off again, but one day she came in and it was around Hanukkah, and she was Jewish. And I said something like Happy Hanukkah to her, and she says, I don't have time to be Jewish this year. She was so stressed at work. I thought that was hilarious. Okay, anyway, when she came into a session thoroughly in this energy, I pointed out to her that she really could not create anything but more of the same in the energy that she was putting out. look at this from the formula that I've just given you. She checked her desires at the door. She didn't appreciate anything. This was where her energy was. There was absolutely no knowingness except defeat, and that she was going to be chronically unhappy. She was negative, low energy, and thoroughly caught up in the issues of the ones we talked about last week. Nobody cares about me, and I never get what I want. She's proving it to herself every hour of every day, right? Interestingly enough, and something important that I wanted you to notice today, is that she didn't care about herself. She was right. Nobody cares about me. But the one that really didn't care about her and that really mattered to manifestation, the one that really was important, is that she didn't care about herself. And she was not making any effort in her direction. You see, it's very important. Are you going to work for yourself or not? Okay. She was abandoning herself and her potential, even thinking about going to work, because she would dread it several days before she ever even went, all weekend. So in the session, I said, isn't there one thing, one tiny little thing that you like about this experience of having to go to this place? Because she was already applying for new jobs, but do you understand, it's off-putting seeing someone so negative. You carry that energy. I mean, after all, we're all little energy radiators. We're putting things out. People pick that up. That's not somebody who's really fun to work with. And second point, she just created over and over and over again the same situation that matched that energy she was putting out, you see. So I said, isn't there something that you like? Now, she was quite the decorator. Her house was beautiful. Her condo, oh my God, it was lovely, very modern. And she said, after thinking for a while, because she had to search for it, you know what I really like about that place? That's the most beautiful lobby going into the building that I've ever seen. It was chrome and glass and beautiful furniture and well-appointed, lovely ferns and plants all put around. Oh, it was exquisite and really her taste. So I asked her, I said, can you, and it had a lot of light, I said, can you linger in the lobby for a little while, appreciating the aspects that you like so much? And can you go down there once in a while to take a break from what you're doing? She didn't take very often anyway. And just go and sit in the lobby and appreciate that beautiful place and the joy of your walking in there every morning, even though you don't like the work. Can you find that for me? And she said, absolutely, she could. She thanked the place for housing her for so long and for providing a good job for her. But now she sat there in the lobby and she appreciated everything that was beautiful around her. And she said to herself that she knew she would appreciate and can appreciate, because it was in her, another job even more. And in 2 weeks, she had another great job, one that she was very happy with. And I've lost touch with her now, but she was still sticking with it. So I certainly wish her well. When I knew her, she was thrilled with it. Now, back to the formula for a minute. You must take action that you are propelled to take. Sometimes that means changing yourself. Sometimes it means sending out a resume. But big change like this, like getting a new job, creating another house, even manifesting a car, comes because of changes in you. Do you realize that? It becomes, you're ready for that now because of the changes that happened in you. So if nothing's happening in you, you're not really manifesting anything. Do you understand? This is about growth and change and opportunity and opening to deeper levels and things coming in that match that now. One of my favorite prayers, I have a lot of really short little prayers, God enter here, etc. But one of my favorite ones is right action, perfect time. And by the way, that's not what I think the right action is and the perfect time that I think about, because I'm constantly bombarded in sessions with people coming in and saying, I will manifest this by, I will have this by, I will. And that's not the way this works. That's the ego. And the ego cannot create anything but more frustration and delay and other things that we've talked about. Right action, perfect time means only God knows these things. And I'm listening really well. And I will do what I must do when I get the message from God that I'm supposed to do something. Right? Okay. It was interesting. I've had several experiences of this. Myself, I've had a lot of experiences. I mean, when you do this work, you just see it almost all the time in your life and in the life of your friends and clients. But I'll never forget this. We used to, I live remotely up in the mountains. I grew up in the summers, and anytime I could get up here from Atlanta, we lived in another part of the mountains. And I loved this little tiny house we had. It was a little tiny cabin and very nice. And I adored it. Some of my happiest times of childhood were there, And one day I woke up out of the bloomin' blue. And I heard the voice of God or my guides, which is, by the way, all the same thing. And I heard, sell that house. The interesting thing about it is when you hear that voice, and everybody can, you just have to get out of the disbelieving mind, that ego child's mind that's closed and is doing something else, right? I heard it. And the thing is that I didn't want to sell this house, but when I heard that voice and I put that house on the market that very day, there was no equivocation at all. I never doubted that this was the right thing. I had to do this. It was the right thing to do. And God had this situation presented itself earlier, I would have gone back and forth. Should I? Should I not? Should I? Should I not? If you're doing that about any decision, that's the ego child's mind. Because the word from God is unequivocal. You will not go back from that. There'll be a peace with it. As there was this time. I sold the house. It was sold in a couple of weeks. I made money on the house. And it was a good thing, too. Because within 5 months of that voice, my mother needed that money because she was diagnosed with spinal cancer. Wow. We needed every bit of that for her care. You see, we're told. Sometimes we don't even understand. I want you to all realize that in this energy, there is no past, present, and future. All the energy is one. The time is now, and we don't even understand the concept of now, all of us. Isn't that interesting? I remember working with a client, and both of us felt this great whoosh of energy through the room. It was startling. And when I tuned into it, it was A friend of hers, I believe it was a friend. This happened several years ago. I may not remember the exact relationship, but I do believe it was a good friend of hers. And she whooshed through the room. We acknowledged that it was she and that she whooshed through the room. And a week later, she died. We didn't know she was dying. I didn't even know the woman. But God knows it. The whole point is to be in that energy, to cooperate with that energy, and to go with. That's right action, perfect time. Now, there's so much to say about all this. By the way, if you are interested in knowing more about everything that I'm talking about, one of the ways to get it, and this is according to the philosophies that we teach here, I have a book. What did I do with that book? Oh, here it is, right here in front of me. It's called The Life You Want. I want to tell you something about this book. There is the first part of the book is on God and who God even is to you. The third part of the book, and there are 3 parts, is on surrendering the ego child's mind. And the middle part of the book is a great deal of detail about manifestation. I thought long and hard about how to frame that, because that's really the path that most people take. That we know more about God, the God that is in us, the one we can use to make our lives better. We start working with manifestation and we really try to put it forth. It's hard. We try. We do get some things. It's just not easy yet. And we keep going. And in full spiritual surrender. And by the way, what are you surrendering? You're only surrendering the ego child's mind, not the ego, it's still part of you. But the ego child's mind, you surrender the part of you that thinks like a child, that feels like a child, that has a philosophy of a child, if children have philosophies at all. You find who you really are authentically underneath the surrender of the things you are not, you see? And that's when it really works. So, certainly, I can talk about a lot more in a book in detail than I can on a 90-minute radio show. So if you haven't gotten a book, it is a hard read, I will tell you now, but it is an important read. I think that you'll enjoy it. At certain points of your life, it's very comforting to pick up, because I wrote it for you guys that are on this path, and it's real fun because clients will come in and they will just describe what I described in the book, and I'll say, did you read on page this? So you don't feel so alone, so you know that this is the natural process and this is where you are right now. What's wrong with that? And everybody goes, why, nothing, and they go back to the book over and over again, which pleases me because that's what it's designed for. Okay. One of the things I say in the book, which I think is a nice analogy, is I have a little friend with a dog named Roxanne. Roxanne is the cutest little dog. She's a Bichon Frise, getting up in years now. And Roxanne has the funniest little habit, and has all her life, of burying bones. She may bury them in the couch or in the potted plant or under the sheets or in the closet or wherever she buries her bones, but she doesn't leave them buried. I'm not sure quite, why one would bury bones anyway. Dogs do, and maybe to get that nice piquant flavor that comes from that. I don't know. But anyway, she doesn't leave them buried. It's as if she wants to make sure they're still there. She doesn't trust that they're not. or something. And then she buries him again. Then she digs him up again, and she buries him again. She digs him up again. We're doing that. We're doing that. Instead of knowing that if we've asked for it, it's so. Letting our minds merge with the mind of God that is in us, the highest self, it's called. And knowing that thought and substance are exactly the same thing to God and therefore now to us. And holding that place of absolute knowing that lives in expectancy, right? Okay. Now, to really believe that, you have to get comfortable with change. And all of us in this work accept incremental change, if you know what I mean. We will change a little here, we'll change a little there, we'll go faster if you use an energy worker or somebody like me, because we'll have more revelations really fast. We won't just rely on our own. You remember that it's always very nice to say, I can do this myself. And you know what? More power to you. However, your ego child's mind wants you alive. It doesn't want you happy. So it wants you working within those limitations. So it's going to help confuse you so you don't see those limitations and you don't see the lies to yourself, so you can remain safe, remain alive. But my point is that really living? Is that really thriving? You have to have real freedom to do that. You have to take the limits off, you see? Okay. So all of us are incrementally changing. Some fast, some slow. But at one point in your career of healing and clearing and becoming who you are authentically, you realize you're ready for, strap yourself in now, radical change. Radical change. If that frightens you, it is only because the ego child's mind is saying, oh my God, all change is bad. And now she's put the word radical with it. Dear God in heaven. Radical change is wonderful. I know that you have to start with incremental change. We're human beings. We're all afraid of being hurt. We want to go slowly. We're cautious, some more than others. Those things will go. The more you are in balance, the more of your discernment comes in to support your kindness and lovingness, your creativity. At no point will you be hung out to dry, exposed, the imposter hanging from a tree for all to see. No. That's not going to happen. That's our drama, and that's got to go too, right? Radical change is actually very good, and I'm going to tell you from my experience, one day, years ago, maybe, I guess it was about 16 or 17 years ago, I woke up and I heard that I was supposed to work on radical change in me, not for anybody else at this point. Radical change. Now, I had known, here's the personal story, it's a long one, strap yourself in, but I want you to know this works. And it doesn't just work for me. I am sorry, it does not. I had worked on myself for many years. It's been something that I was devoted to. I worked with other people's methodologies before I found my own, okay? And it really works, this methodology. And then I started working on myself. Around this time, I had a really strong feeling that that another partner for me, that resulted in a marriage, was coming in for me. Now, I had been divorced for 12 years from a very nice man. He was a lovely man, but we really did grow apart. I think our philosophies of living were very different. The way we thought about things was different. And it made its appearance in our marriage. So we left each other amicably. Now, radical change. Let's talk about, and I want you to think energy in the story because I'm going to have to start a number of years before, almost 50 years before, certainly over 45 years ago. All right, so here we go. My current husband is named Michael. A number of years ago, we were 20 years old. He lived in Vienna, Austria. I lived here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I had a best friend in college. Her name was Barbara. And Barbara was beautiful. And she was much more adventurous than I was. She took her junior year abroad, had all sorts of amazing adventures. I remember she got arrested in Bulgaria and taken out to dinner by a couple of very cute army officers, I guess, or policemen, and was certainly released, but they all wanted to date with her, so they arrested her for being on the wrong side of the fence or something when she was taking pictures. She took pictures of something she shouldn't have, I think. So she took her junior year abroad in Vienna, Austria, where she met Michael, and she fell in love with him. And Michael fell in love with her. These were two young people at 20 years old that were going to head to the altar, without a doubt. And that was great. And I heard all about him from Barbara. And she was very, very flattering and very much in love. So she came back here on her senior year. She transferred from another school to Georgia State. She wanted to get that degree quickly and get right back to Vienna, right? And I was at home. The phone rang. I picked it up. It was Barbara. And she didn't say hello. She said, "Don't try to talk me out of this. I have to go back to Vienna. I have to go back now. I have to see Michael. I can't explain it. I don't know why. But I'm going, and I've called a taxi." And what do you say to that? I said, "Barbara, I'm not trying to talk you out of it, but you're graduating in 5 days." And she said, "They'll send it to me. I've got to go." And I said, "Well, I love you with all my heart." We had planned to see each other in the summer, so I said, "Okay. We'll see each other then." And we hung up. She left for Vienna that very night. What I didn't realize, what nobody could have guessed, was that in 3 or 4 days she was dead. Barbara had told me when she came back to Atlanta, she told me because she had to, she told Michael in Vienna because she had to, that she'd been diagnosed that junior year with epilepsy. And on this particular night, she was in a boarding house. She was going to a dance with Michael the next night. So she went down the hall about midnight to take a bath. She ran a bathtub. And she had a seizure, and she fell in the bathtub and drowned. It was horrible. Now, before all that happened, Barbara, because we were always buying each other little presents, gave me something she thought was very valuable indeed. It was called a Diamond Deb. Did any of you all have one of those? It was a nail file with little diamond chips on it. And she said so proudly I would never have to buy another nail file for the rest of my life, that it was going to last forever. And she gave that to me. And it was so interesting because I used it constantly, and whenever I used it, I thought of Barbara, and then, of course, I thought of Michael. They were one in my mind. It was interesting that day she died, or the next day. Her parents were out of town, so there was no one to reach. We didn't know where they were. Michael was frantic, trying to get people. There was an operator that apparently called my house, my mother's and father's house, and asked for Barbara, her name, Eddins, which was my maiden name. And my father, in a hurry to fix his oatmeal, said, "There's no one here by that name," and hung up, and was immediately struck. He turned to my mother and he said, "Oh, God, I wish I hadn't done that. It sounded like somebody was in trouble." Indeed, they were. So, her parents were eventually found, and we were all dealing with our grief in different ways. Not until just a few years ago did we find out why we were not invited to the funeral. It was in Pennsylvania. We were not invited simply because there was a wedding that weekend, and they didn't want to take away from that. So Barbara's friend, me, and Michael, her love, didn't go. We didn't have that closure. We only found that out after we married, talking to her brother. Isn't that something? It's a wild world what we find out as we go on. We keep asking the questions, and sometimes the answers actually do come. In fact, they always do. So I wrote Michael expressing my condolences and never expecting to hear from him again, and he wrote back. And his school started sending him over here to Virginia to study from time to time, at which time Michael would always come down and see George Barker, Barbara's father, and me. It was nothing romantic back then. He was always Barbara's, but we always had a good time together. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't talk about Barbara. In fact, I only heard what those last days were like when we married. We finally tried to put what he knew and what I knew together. So we wrote back and forth when he wasn't visiting over here, and that was lovely. But back then we didn't have email, so letters took 8 weeks to get to one another, as I recall. And you know what? I was so impatient with that, because by the time I'd written him some news, or he had written some news, I didn't even remember what I wrote. 8 weeks had passed. I was on to other things. It's very frustrating. So I let the correspondence go. It was me. I just thought this just cannot work the way it's working, right? Phone calls back then, long distance, were very, very expensive, especially Europe. You just didn't make them. We stayed friends until 1977, kind of keeping in touch. I believe it was in 76 or 75 that he wrote me and told me he was getting married. And I was happy for him. He had been through so much sadness, so I was glad that he was marrying. He married a wonderful person. And in 1977, I went over to Vienna and met his wife and spent the day with her and her little infant daughter, now my daughter, who's all grown up and beautiful. And we had a lovely day. That night, Michael took over, came home from work, and took me to the Prater, which is the amusement park. Everything was shut up there. It was really pretty dismal, but we had a good laugh. And it was just the most dreadful little haunted house we'd ever been in, but it was the only ride available, so we went into that. Moths flew out of these dusty old ghosts that, came out to greet us as our car went by, that little car tram went by. So that was the last time I saw him. That night, as we were driving to the Prado and home, his odometer hit one of the 0 marks. It was a fairly new car, I believe, and as I recall. And anyway, he said from that point on that whenever the car rolled over, he thought of me. One of the things I'm wanting you to realize is these were not two people that never thought of each other. I thought of him through the Diamond Deb. He thought of me through the rollover cars odometer. So we lost touch for many years after that. Then in 2006, for some reason, I had this overwhelming desire to find Michael. And I got on Google. I'm not very good at any of this technical stuff. Those of you who have listened to me for a while know that. And I looked for Michael Novak. Michael Novak is a name like John Smith in America, but it's a name like that in Europe. It's very common. And I couldn't find him. So I had a good cry about that because I felt I had been very cavalier with a lovely friendship and tried to put it out of my mind, although I was still very sad about that. I didn't realize that in 2006, Michael's wife had been diagnosed with a cancer that would really kill her. I think I was picking up all that and what was about to happen. In 2010, she died. Michael says he experienced an immediate desire to contact me and to find me, but he didn't know what happened to me. He didn't even ask in his mind. He didn't try to talk him out of finding me. Oh, she's probably a grandmother by now with children. He just set out to find me. He didn't know my married name. I had married sometime after him and after we lost touch. So that darling wife of his, every time they got a new address book, included my parents' address and phone number. Of course, the phone number was no longer valid, and I had sold that house. So Michael set out to search, and he found that a woman named Martha Burgess had sold that particular address. He researched it online, and he wondered if Martha Burgess could be me, which it was. And so he looked for me on social media, and he found me on LinkedIn. Now, I didn't look at LinkedIn. I'm not a real big social media person. I mean, I'm on it. My office has put me on it. But I'm not on it a lot, as you all can probably tell. I don't post near as much as I should on Facebook and that kind of thing. I do my radio show, and that's, I say hi to some people, but that's about it. Okay. So I didn't see his posting on LinkedIn, which said, I'm trying to find Martha Edens. Are you she? I'm trying to find my old friend. Now, so where do I go next? Let's say I remember the day of February 17th very well of that year. I went shopping with a girlfriend of mine, and we went into a store, and in that store I found a little teddy bear that big. It was very cute, and I don't collect things like this. I mean, stuffed animals, they go to my dog, and he tears them up, and we have fun with that. But this bear was mine. I didn't know why. It had a little straw hat on and little flowers, very cute, little teddy bear. I don't collect little teddy bears. I was standing in the line to pay for this, and I looked at my girlfriend who was with me shopping, and I said, why am I buying this? And she just shrugged as if to say, why do you do anything? She knows me well. So I bought it, and I brought it home, and I put it opposite the bed on a chest and kept looking at it thinking, why the heck did I buy this? And that night, I remember quite well, I was going to bed and I had some reading material. I think it was a magazine on the bed. And in the magazine, I looked at the horoscope right before it turned out the light. And it said, tomorrow, February 18th, would be a life-changing day. And your life will never be the same. And I said, oh, okay, fine, great. Great to know. Turned out the light. Didn't think about it again. Now, the next day, an old buddy of mine, I had done a think tank with him. I'd been on his think tank. He created psychological tests. Contacted me. I hadn't heard from him for years and years. And he contacted me through LinkedIn, and he said, would you connect with me? I don't remember what you call it on LinkedIn, which shows you I haven't been on it for the entire time that I've been married to Michael. But anyway, will you connect with me? And of course, I was very fond of this man, so I said, absolutely, and punched that button, which took me right to LinkedIn, which took me to a page, and the only thing I saw was Michael's. Only thing I saw on that page, I still can't tell you what was on that page, was Michael Novak's message to me. I shook. Just to be connected with him again. I was absolutely thrilled. I wrote him as soon as I could recover. And he told me later that when he saw that I had answered him, he couldn't open it either for a few hours. He was shaking too. When he opened it, he saw it was from me and that he had found me. And we made an appointment almost immediately. I think something was wrong with his computer and he had the flu, but to connect the next day. The next day we did, and he took me on a virtual tour of his flat with his camera. And there, on a kitchen wall, was a shelf of teddy bears, just like the one I had bought. And I said, Michael, whose teddy bears are those? And he said, my wife's. She collected them. And I knew without a doubt that his dear wife was making herself known to me and saying, take care of Michael. I got the message really strongly. Michael felt it too. There was no talking ourselves into anything. We were in love almost immediately. This was so peculiar. To me, it was normal and natural. You work in this energy and you see all sorts of miraculous things. I had been working on my comfort with radical change for 5 years. Michael went to his daughter, who was now a grown, wise woman, and he told her about these fantastic feelings for me and everything happening so fast. This was only like 2 or 3 days in. And his daughter said, what are you waiting for? You're old. Go. And he did. He was over here within a couple of days. I mean, within a couple of weeks, I guess, was more accurate. We knew it was our time, and for some reason, everything turned on then, and we married 6 months later. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because radical change is your friend. But you don't know that change itself is your friend yet. And until you know that, these things have a hard time manifesting. And I want you to have the ability to do this, which is, first of all, to address what might be in the way. You see, I knew he was there. I knew certain things about him. Spirit had told me. They didn't tell me his name, of course. That would have tortured me, right? They told me the word power. He was the head of a power company in Vienna. They told me mechanical and kept showing me machinery. He's a mechanical engineer. They told me I would be the third wife. I was actually the second legally, but I included Barbara. So indeed, I was the third. I knew he had 2 grown children. And there he was one day. But to bring him in, I did not sit idly by, guys. You know, I think you all think it's, I'm not doing any work over here and happen in my life. I think it's too easy to say, oh yeah, that's Martha, that's not me. I can't do that. And I say, indeed, you can. You certainly can do it. You just have to work on yourself. And that's all I did for all those years. And for those 5 years, I was waiting for this man to manifest in my life. He didn't manifest for a good reason. His dear wife was dying. Okay. The nature of energetic healing is to change the energy that is everything, and everything changes. So we must become less fearful, less traumatic, less anxious, less defeated, less harsh, and a lot more. We've got to discover those pockets that we are doing to ourselves every day. We have to release these things. To manifest, you must enlist a cellular response and be in the energy of potential. You must meld with that mind of God that I talked about last week and perceive no difference between potential and substance. There is no difference. It's all energy. Impatience has to go out the window. Not that you tell yourself you have to wait, because I don't think you do. I think you can manifest almost instantly. I think it is a matter of whether you're arguing with your knowingness that lives in expectancy or not. How well and how fast you do this has everything to do with that, you see. There are also natural laws to support manifestation. There's the law of, if you might want to write these down, chaos to order. Chaos to order. Everything starts in chaos, everybody goes to order. So what happens if you're afraid of change? Chaos, of course, is the same thing. Chaos is interpreted as negative by our ego child's mind, but it's just change. So where's the negativity? If you're going to get what you want in the end, why fight it? But we do. Everything starts in chaos. Everything goes to order. This is the way anything is manifested and the way anything is done. Chaos, when you bring a new child into your house and you get used to it before you can go to the new order, before the new order emerges, you have to deal with the chaos. Stars explode, chaos to order. On a molecular level, cells die and new ones are born, chaos to order. Everything in life works on that principle of chaos to order. So what happens if you don't go with? If you're trying to control everything? You see my point. Okay. Second law that I want you to know about, there are many of them, but we're going to just talk about a few here, is the law of cause and effect. This has been misinterpreted, gosh, forever, huh? You know, the gods must be unhappy with us. We are being punished because of something. That's not true. It's simply chaos to order. And it is simply cause and effect. Everything has an effect. Everything has an effect. Even if you don't see the effect, it still has an effect. Your thoughts, cumulative, that has an effect on your life and what you're what it looks like, right? You're manifesting. The next law is the law of thought to substance. We've talked about that one. That's really important. You need to believe at some point that everything is the same because it's energy. And in energy, it is the same thought to substance. You can't separate thought as thought and substance as substance. I asked for it, but I don't see it yet. And panic. You can't do that. You have to hold the fact that you've asked for it and it's so. And gives you a hope and an excitement about life. This expectancy. Because you know. There is the law of attraction. We have heard about that. This doesn't mean you have to be the car or be compatible with the car you're trying to create. No, it does mean that you have to be compatible and cooperative, they don't tell you that part, with the energy that creates and is the car or the house or the job or the person. You see? You have to be cooperative and compatible. Cooperative is the big word here. With the energy, not with the thing. The thing is just the thing. It doesn't really carry any weight except in your emotional desires. Okay. The next one is the law of least resistance. The law of least resistance. I think of a great story. This story is not mine either, but I had a gentleman that was my client, and he came in one day, and he said, "Oh, I am in such trouble. I am in such trouble." And I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, I've just found my house, beautiful little neighborhood in Atlanta, is leaning like this, and it's going to cost a fantastic amount of money to right it, and I don't have it." And I said, "And what else is wrong?" And he said, "Oh, my business is on a property that has been there for years, but the property is now a drug property. You can't get out of the car and walk to the building without somebody trying to sell you drugs. It's in the worst neighborhood there is, and it's terrible. You know, it's awful. I'm having a hard time getting workers to work with me because they don't want to be there." So we worked on all that. We worked on it for weeks. And then he came back. And he said, "Oh, things." I said, "How are things?" He said, "Oh, worse than they've ever been." I said, "Really? Let's talk about it." He said, "Well, first of all, somebody showed up and has bought my property, wants to buy my property. We're in negotiations right now. And he said he's giving me scads of money, much more than the property is worth, in my opinion. It's just awful." And I said, "Well, what's awful about it?" He said, "I'm going to have to work and now find another property to move my business to. It's horrible." And I said, "What else?" And he said, "Well, now I have the money to fix up the house, but that's terrible too." And I said, "What's wrong with that?" And he said, "Because it's going to take 6 months to fix. I've got to find another place to live." By this time, I was kind of chuckling. And I said, "Sweetie, all this is what you want, was what you wanted." And he was stunned. And he could only say, "Oh, yeah." He had created it in spite of himself, but he wasn't letting himself have it all. For that, he had to realize what blessings all this was, right? Don't resist. Don't resist and you'll have more, because there is the law of least resistance. Everything comes to you in the least resistant way. Don't you be the one that's blocking it all. Then there is the law of fair exchange. This means that in any relationship, whether it's a partnership of business or partnership of a personal partnership or anything else in marriage, There has to be an equal exchange of energy. It's an equal exchange of energy when I do a session on you. You give me money, I give you the session and all the energy and attention and expertise I have in those 2 hours. There has to be an exchange of energy. Everything is energy. Friendship for friendship. Comfort when something happens in return for, at some later date, comfort from the other person. But what happens when you want life to be fair? That's an issue, you know. That's not fair, most of the world says about everything. Life isn't fair. You're supposed to be an adult enough and have the adult mind to make sure that you are living fairly, that when you're making a deal, that everybody's getting something out of it, including you. You are supposed to have a lot of discernment. You're supposed to make good, fair deals. You're supposed to be the fair one, not life. And you have to learn to be fair to yourself. Most people are not. Now, I warn you about something too in this, because a lot of times in the law of fair exchange, people have their fist up in the air and they're saying, I have to speak my truth. You heard that? Okay, that's ego child's mind stuff. Nobody has to speak their truth. What is your truth? Only what you know at this moment. There are deeper truths that you do not know, and neither do I. They're coming. How exciting. So, don't deceive yourself. Okay? Love of all kinds thrives in your equality and charity, the equality and charity that you create in your life for you and others. It doesn't exist in the world. The world isn't fair. It has to be fair. It's not fair. Okay. Now, I've got some really important exercises for you. I'm going to give you a few of the lighter ones because we've only got 12 more minutes. But we're going to next week go into some heavy-duty things that I want you to do and do well, which will matter to you and what you're creating in the world, okay? So one of the things that is a wonderful thing for you to do that will really help you is to go to the bank and get a $100 bill and put it in your wallet and carry it around with you. Don't spend it. Just have $100 in your wallet. Because one of the things that's often wrong with people creating or trying to create wealth is that they don't feel prosperous, that they identify with the poor. There are all sorts of reasons for that. I'm trying to circumvent them just by giving you a simple exercise, and I'm going to ask you not to attach any emotion to it. Just get your $100, put it in your wallet, and let it change you. It's going to change your mentality, because really poor people don't walk around with $100. So get $100. Now eventually, when you get real adept at this, I want you to try the next level. That'll happen months from now with that $100. Then I want you to spend it, and I want you to put another $100 in your wallet right then. You see? Okay. So that's the exercise. It's amazing how it changes your mindset, and we do need the mindset changed. Now, what else do we want here? Not only do we want the mindset changed about poverty and wealth, but we want the mind changed and freed up from a lot of things. If the less grateful you are, the more you're in the ego child's mind, the more grateful you are. You're in the highest self. However, watch gratitude from fantasy. Oh, I know so many people that say how grateful they are. Oh, I'm so grateful. They're not at all grateful. They're only grateful when things go well, and they're grateful because God's going to take care of it, because I don't have any involvement at all, and I'm not accountable. You are accountable. You're creating this or you're not. Let's come out of the fantasy realm. As a matter of fact, shatter it as fast as you can, which you don't want to do because of what I said last week, which is it's your drug. It's your opiate, right? Fantasy is the place you go to feel better. You don't need it when you put some other things in place. So watch gratitude. We want you to be grateful, but we want you to be grateful in reality. And you're going to get more and more grateful the more you go into deeper consciousness, because there's nothing but all this wonderful stuff to be grateful for, which you don't see right now. That scope isn't available yet, but it will be. I'm talking to you guys like you haven't done this, but if you have done this, then you know what I'm talking about, and you're well on your way. So I don't mean to talk down to any of you. Please forgive me. We also need to deal with a subject that is everybody's least favorite. You know why? Because they really haven't dealt with it, and it's called forgiveness. Everybody says they've dealt with it. You may be telling yourself now, I've dealt with it. The fact is, most everybody has not. In fact, I have a test about forgiveness that I sometimes give people. Let me tell you, nobody's been, the whole class failed. It was hilarious. It was like, I think we're going to need to do more work. When people come to me, having been in this program and that program, they come to me and they're very shocked that what I'm picking up is what they think they've dealt with, but they haven't. Not on the levels in which we go. And those are the important ones, because they will free your energy to do this well, to live well, to thrive. We divide our energies with unforgiveness and with a lack of gratitude. So it just means we've got to do more work on the self. That's all. By the way, I often hear a real funny statement, which is, God doesn't know what I want. I've got to do this myself. God's all you are. Do you realize that? That's the silliest statement in the world, but the ego child's mind tells us all that. Look, God's all you are. There isn't any part of you that isn't God. It's a perfect system. Certainly the ego child's mind, selfish, petty, everything else, that's God too. Highest self, that's God too. One is fear-based, that's God too. One is love-based, that's God too. One is the lack of everything, that's God-based. One's the fullness of everything, that's God-based. How do you want to see the world? From the ego child's mind and the futility of it all, the lack of everything, how the struggle? Or are you going to get on that journey and go and open the advanced mind, the progressive mind, the merging with God mind, the highest self, the love-based self? That's where all this becomes easy. And your journey to consciousness is just that, going from one to the other. It's a shame not to do it. Not that anyone should be shamed for it, but it's just a shame because we never reach our potential, because our potential is in the high self. And it's all doable. I'm preaching to the choir, aren't I? Because you're doing it in some aspect. That's why you're listening to a show like this. You know it's in you. You just don't know how to wire it all up. And that's what we try to give you each week, and why I write books. Okay. Another quick exercise to tell you about within the next 5 minutes is keeping a log. When people have money problems, they actually don't have money problems. They have the lack of money problem. Okay, it's the lack of money that is the problem. In other words, I'm not saying that very well. And there is a lack of responsibility about money and even an unawareness about where it's even going. So this doesn't sound like a fun exercise, but it is a marvelous exercise. It's going to teach you something about you. And that is, keep a little notebook. And you have to write every single thing down you spend money on in the notebook. Every single thing. So you buy a 25-cent pack of gum, goes in the notebook. You buy any purchase, whatever it is, for fun or out of necessity, you have to write it down. You have to say, this is what was on this day. I spent this, and here are the prices that I spent. I want you to learn something from your own spending habits. In other words, I want you to be aware of what goes out and what comes in. I want you to be aware of this. Really important. For many years, when I was working on all this, I liked to take my checks to the bank because I wanted to see the money going in. But I paid online because that it was nice to acknowledge what I had going out, but I didn't want to spend as much energy on that. I was spending a lot of energy. I was sitting there endorsing my checks. I was getting in the car. I was going to the bank. I was saying hello to everybody. I was putting the money in the bank. That takes a lot. I was driving home. It takes a lot of energy. Hitting a button saying pay this person that doesn't take as much energy. So I was already investing in what was coming in more than what was going out. You see? Okay. So those are 3 wonderful ways to start this process. I'll also say 2 other things. It's wonderful to be generous. Generosity is really important. You can be generous and not have any money at all. And it's interesting for me to observe the ego child's mind at work when I have people in my home. Because there are people that will come, I'll give everybody tea or coffee or whatever they want, and there are people that come and they share that with me, and there are people that never bring one thing to contribute. Not one. Now, that's just an example. I don't need the coffee and tea. But the gesture means a lot. It means that I'm generous with my energy. It comes, I'm having something come to me and I'm passing it through. And that's the fluidity that we need in this. I mean, how much does it cost to go out to your yard to pick some flowers and bring those? Huh? If you never think of it, the stuckness that's causing you to never think it and to think only of yourself and what you don't have is the problem. So generosity is a huge part of the success of this. But being smart, not giving away something that you need, but finding creative ways to give something that someone would enjoy. Another thing is to always, always celebrate another's success.
90 seconds.
We're almost out of time. Do celebrate another's success. It's a way of whether, stop being hung up on whether they deserve it or not. For heaven's sakes, nobody deserves anything, and everybody deserves everything. So don't play that game. Just be happy for them. Because everybody in the world is you. Be happy when somebody achieves something and when something nice comes to them. Very important. Let's stop there. We'll take up where we left off next week. Dear God, thank you so much for the opportunity we've had of being together today, of learning together. And we now open ourselves to the healing that is intrinsic now in us. We allow ourselves to be more fluid and to give up certain things and to see things differently in the world. And we open ourselves to the grace and goodness of you, who is all we are. Thank you so much dear God. And we say this prayer now in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of everybody listening to the show today. Guys, thank you so much, too, for getting on social media and passing these shows around. We are really trying to increase our fan base, and you are on the cutting edge of that and on the front lines. Thank you. Thank you. Please do so with every show you enjoy. See you next week. Bye-bye.